Adrienne, welcome to PerformX podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And we chatted a few weeks ago, and something that you said really excited me around these 5 modern day fitness personas. So very excited to bring it to the stage at PerformX, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to preview it today. But before we get into that, let's give you a bit of an intro. So Adrienne is an ex-professional dancer, leading wellness consultant and strategist, author, and just about to release your second book, which we'll come on to. A podcast host now with 5 million downloads across Power Hour, which I'd highly recommend, or interviewed 2 of my favourite authors, Oliver Burkeman and James Clear, which we'll talk about today, and Modern Wellness with your partner Sammy and the legend Ollie Patrick, who connected us. Not to mention a TEDx speaker and having done talks at lots of different HQs at Apple. And so what an intro.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I think an important thing to touch on, and your whole, I mean, you've done 350 plus podcasts on this topic. So I think an interesting thing before we get started is your mindset and how you have, as we've just been talking about, 10x'd to the point you are now. So let's unpack that a little bit and just understand about your mindset.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a great place to start because I think it's so important with everything that we do, and I'm sure you hear a lot of people talking about mindset and growth mindset and our kind of, mental clarity and performance, but ultimately it does underpin so much of what we do and our perception of the world, what we believe is possible for ourselves and for our lives and for our businesses. So yeah, I think it's a great place to start. Yeah, when you say 10x, I like this idea of 10x. I think it's good for people to think in that way. But I think often when I hear people talk about 10xing something, they want to do it immediately. So they're like, how can I 10x the number of customers that I have? Or how can I 10x the amount that I earn? Or how can I 10x my audience on social media? And they want to do it immediately. Whereas the way I think about, and my mindset, I suppose, over the last decade or more of my own career development and both personal and professional development, it has been incremental steps. It has been 10% more and 10% more and 10% more. But when you compound that over a decade, those results do look like, wow, you've gone from this to this. And so I think that's the way I've always approached things, is like things won't, and it's not to say you can't 10x things maybe in 6 months. If someone said to you, right, what would it take for you to 10x this in 6 months? Maybe you could. But personally, in all honesty, being honest with you and the listeners of this, mine has not been like an overnight success. And I think for a lot of people, their overnight success has taken them 10 years. So I've always approached things with that mindset of thinking strategically. I'm quite a strategic thinker, so maybe we'll talk about that later on with the book. But I scenario things. So I think ahead and I think, okay, if this was option A, that could lead to this is one way. What's option B and C and D and E and F? And I will weigh up all the different kind of outcomes and make thoughtful, strategic decisions. So sometimes when people see things after and go, oh, that was lucky that you did that, or oh, that was, good timing, or sometimes there is always going to be an element of that, luck and good timing and all that. But I think I've always been strategic and made thoughtful decisions. I think a lot. And I think, from a mindset perspective, I've always challenged myself to go, okay, you can dream big and you can visualize big things. I'm big on that. But you also have to visualize the steps to get there. You have to make a plan and then execute on that plan. And I think so many people focus on the visualizing the big goal, visualize the end goal, the whole idea of manifest it and have a vision board. I love that. But what's missing often is the 25 steps that are going to get you there, and then executing every single one of them to make it happen.
Yeah, I really like that. It's that kind of law of attraction versus law of action theory it's like what can you actually get on with next, as opposed to just sitting and dreaming, thinking. It's kind of like,
yeah. I think, like I said, I'd always encourage people from a mindset perspective to, like I say, think big. The idea of 10x is like, it's challenging yourself to not limit yourself. And I think, we all have limits that we sometimes put on ourselves or others have given us. So even if you think right back to being at school, the things that people said about you at school, like everyone will know what that thing was, whether it was good or bad. If someone said, oh, you're really sporty, or you're really brainy, or you talk too much, or you're shy, like the things that we get told, we often keep that label. And I think a really important thing around mindset is to challenge some of those labels or words or phrases and think, is that who you are now? Is that who you would like to become more of in the future? Or is that who you were 10 years ago? Because maybe it's different now, you know? Maybe at school, I don't know what those things were for you, but maybe you were shy, or maybe you were, but maybe you're not anymore. And I think people keep those things in their mind that I've always been told, like, I'm not good with numbers, or I've always been told that I'm not. Doesn't mean that that's true today.
It's true. Yeah,
so that's a good mindset shift, is to go, do those labels, do those names. Are they actually who I am now? And are they who I want to become?
Love that. Love that. So we had the pleasure of you joining our PerformX Advisory Board.
Yes.
We got together as a team a few weeks, probably a little bit longer now, time's flying, but it was a really powerful session, really enjoyed it, and great to have you involved. What was your key sort of takeaway? What did you go away thinking? Because it was a really kind of energized conversation, a lot of passionate people, and yeah, we're lucky to have the group we've got together. But yeah, what was your kind of, what did you think walking out of that room kind of thing?
Oh gosh, that is a good question, and thank you for having me and inviting me to be a part of the board. I thought it was really interesting to be there and to meet some people that I knew in the room and some that I didn't. I think it was very clear to me that everybody there is really passionate about the industry. They have a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, and that's something that you can't fast track and you can't buy that. So I think having experience in the room is really valuable. I think more young people and more founders and startups should actually get external advice. You know, you're very fortunate that you've got that amazing network of people. I think often people want to do it all on their own and they're afraid to kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just a young and naive and confident and think, well, I know what I want to do. I think it's really, really great actually that you trust and listen to others and take their opinions on board. So yeah, a lot of passion in the room, a lot of expertise. I think when I left, I think maybe a challenge that a lot of people face, and maybe this is something that you've thought about, I don't know, is simplicity and focus. Because I'm sure, I mean, everyone in that room, there's so many ideas, there's so many things you could pursue. And again, you know, my husband and I, we work with a lot of startup founders, and that is often the challenge. They're not short of ideas. They're not short of, you know, how many features could we build in this product, or how many markets. It's not that. It's actually simplifying and having a more spearhead approach. And so I kind of left the room with, like everybody else, probably lots of ideas, and I was thinking, I don't envy you now having to kind of, you know, like filter that down and say what is going to be the most important thing here, or the most important what are the three things potentially, and then discarding everything else.
Yes.
Because it doesn't mean never, but for this show, to make it really kind of impactful and focused. So that's the challenge that I guess that you got. Yeah
100%. I think it comes on to our main point of this conversation with the understanding your customer persona, but I think that's where we've switched the show up a lot from its original foundation, where it was a lot of different things. Like a lot of these shows you have consumers there, you have you know, whereas now we're like, this is the business of fitness show, and we know exactly who we're speaking to, and having like some of those actual customers there in the room, like your John Penny's from Third Space or your Martin Oakey's from Everlasting, they're the actual end customer that are going to be at the show. So when they're kind of, you're gauging a live reaction of what do they think, or what are they really interested in, what problems are they needing to solve right now. And then we speak to as many of those kind of people as we can as well, to kind of go, here's what we think, here's what our experts think, are we hitting the mark, like that kind of thing. So making it a constant two-way thing. But I'd say definitely having that very focused customer persona, which we'll come on to. But I know exactly what you mean. So let's get into it. So when we spoke, I was fascinated by a deck you present to a lot of the big organisations, from car brands to hotel brands, to really understand the modern wellness consumer, because they're kind of saying, look, we want fitness people, and obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, and I think the market's changed drastically, and I think this is a really key one for our audience to really dig into. I think they'll get so much from this. But yeah, let's start by kind of top line. Who are those five customer personas?
Yes, so I love this. I could talk about it all day. So I'm really looking forward to sharing more about this at PerformX next year. And as you say, I've worked with some huge global brands, so car brands and hotel brands, but also smaller brands who are understanding now that the wellness industry, fitness and health consumers, it's almost like it's taken over every other industry now. There's touch points across fashion, across hospitality, across travel. So everyone, regardless of if they're a car brand or a hotel brand or even a non-alcoholic drinks brand, so many brands are now looking at the wellness industry. They're looking at fitness consumers. They're looking at health conscious individuals and saying, how do we market to that person? What do they care about? So that's exactly the piece of work that you're talking about, where I have outlined these personas in kind of like really clear characteristics and supported by data. So how they spend, how much they spend, their habits, their behaviors, so that people can look at those and say, okay, which one of these best fits our product or our service, and then how do we reach them and what do they want? So should I take you through all of them and just give you like a little brief overview first?
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got the everyday athlete. So the everyday athlete is someone who views, so this is the first persona. So I call them everyday athlete, and it's someone who views fitness as a lifestyle rather than a hobby. So it's not something that they just do at the weekend. It is a part of their DNA. It's part of their personality. It's part of their life. So fitness is very important for them. They are committed to, they have like focused goals on performance. So they might be focused on lifting a certain weight and getting a PB, running a certain time, training for a certain event. We all know who that person is. You know, if they're training for a marathon, if they're training for high rocks, this person is the everyday athlete. So then it's thinking about, well, how do they spend? What kind of brands and products do they buy? Where do they get information from? Where do they consume media? Where is their attention? And so I go through all of these details, and again, supported by data, looking at the stats to kind of, really kind of identify who this person is. So you can probably think of the kinds of brands that the everyday athlete buys. So they might shop at places like Gymshark, Lululemon, Nike. They might wear an Apple Watch. They might buy Athletic Greens. You know the kind of person I'm talking about because you know this consumer well. And when I then go into, okay, how do you engage with this person? What's the marketing message that this person is going to be attracted to? You've got to think about their motivations. So they're typically quite competitive people, and they might be competitive with themselves, but also with others. So community is key for this consumer. Social is key to this consumer. So that's why things like the CrossFit community, like the High Rocks community, like running groups, running communities, that's why, or even apps that have challenges, things that have community-based challenges where even if you're not together in person, you can be online with other people, leaderboards, like these kind of things really appeal to this consumer because they enjoy, the challenge aspect, challenging themselves and challenging others and making it social. So that's just one of the personas. And again, I could go through more detail about the everyday athlete, what they really care about. So things like performance, recovery is important to them. They will look for products and brands to support their nutrition, sleep, but mostly everything, if you were really wanting to focus on what do they care about, is performance-based goals. So everyday athletes, that's one. I won't go into as much detail for all the others, but I'll share them with you. So the next one is the conscious consumer. Now you can probably guess what they care about. They care a lot about sustainability and about buying products and services from brands that care about not only their own health, but also the health of the planet. So there's a lot of data to support that conscious consumers will spend more money. So people often think about it as less is more, but they'll spend more money. They will actually buy more expensive products if they know that the product is doing good for the planet. Things like regeneration, eco-friendly, sustainable packaging. That consumer really does. It's not just talking the talk with these consumers. They actually care. They want to know end to end where their money, like their purchasing power, they use their purchasing power for the good of the planet. So there's the conscious consumer. Moving on to the next one, there is the optimizer or the biohacker. So the optimizer is somebody who wants to optimize everything when it comes to mental performance, clarity, not just physical performance. They might be interested in extending lifespan and health span, but for the optimizer, something that's really important to them is data and research. So things are data led. So they're not just going to take your word for it. If you say, oh, this product's going to make you feel good, what does that mean? How can they measure that? So they are very early adopters of new technology, new health tech, wearables. They will try and test, almost become like scientists on their own bodies. They'll try things out and say, well, I'm going to cut this out for 6 months, or I'm going to do this. They've got the 9-step morning routine with the ice and all the different things, the bulletproof coffees. They've got it dialed in. And that early adopter if you want to engage with that person, again, looking at what do they care about, where is their attention, you've got to have data, you've got to back up and they've got to be able to measure the improvement that you're claiming that you're going to help them to make. So that's the optimizer and the biohacker, a market that is growing, and I think a lot of people in the industry are really trying to understand what that's all about and kind of getting involved there. Next one, also jump in at any point, Giles, if you're like, okay, any point, just jump in, because I can talk about this all day, and I will be with a lot of slides and data to help people kind of take it all in, because I'm aware it is a lot. So the next one, and one that this consumer is often overlooked, I think there is a huge opportunity for businesses and brands to focus on this customer, and this is the active ager. Okay, so it's not just someone who's focused on longevity, it's someone who I'd say like 45 plus, maybe 50 plus age, who is living well. They want to age well, they want to travel and have adventures and start new things, and they are not this bracket or this kind of idea that we used to get told about aging, which was like, boring, you are after a certain age, you're basically just waiting to die. It's this idea that, do you know what I mean? The way that they're marketed to is in this like quiet voice of someone with grey hair saying like, keep moving and keep mobility and and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow, no wonder I want to die. And I think it's changing, but it needs to change faster. Aging needs a rebrand, I think the beauty industry kind of got there and was like, okay, people don't necessarily want to look older, but now I think people are understanding that aging is not a bad thing. Like, we're all going to age, and how do we want to live as we age? So if you think about it, I'm not sure if you've got anyone it comes to mind who might fit into that demographic, but people over a certain age, maybe they've got more time now because maybe their work commitments have changed. Maybe they've got more disposable income because they've been on a journey through their career in those higher earning years. Maybe their kids are grown up and actually they've got more free time, where before they might have had more commitments with young children. So there's all these things around the active ager, which I think, again, a huge opportunity for people to understand why this consumer now wants to learn so much more about their own health. So they're so proactive. No one wants to wait anymore until, oh, I've got to go to the GP and something's wrong. Oh, I've got pain, or I've got, illness or disease. People want to be really proactive about staying healthy, living well. They're reading books, they're listening to podcasts, they're informing themselves, and then making lifestyle changes to support that.
So in the fitness industry, they talk a lot about the missed opportunity of that baby boomer generation, because everyone targets the millennials. So this active agers it's not that whole group, but it's a niche part of that group who are proactively pursuing health, right?
For sure. Yeah. And I think it's a huge market, because like you say, some of those millennials have big, millennials are even going to be getting to that age soon, right? So 45 plus is, and especially for women, there's a lot of changes going on, perimenopause, menopause, people are talking about that so much more, and those women are empowered. They want to take care of themselves, their bodies, their hormone health. They're spending money, they really are. And I think experiences as well, people that have gone through maybe divorces, they're in the second stage of life where they're like, I want to travel the world. I want to go on these yoga retreats and hiking trips. They want to experience things, and they've got the time and the money to do it. So I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think one more thing to add about the active ager is for people to consider, who are you putting in front of these people? So for example, there's nothing wrong, I'm not saying we can't have like an incredible 20-year-old trainer who's super knowledgeable, you can, but I think often, like you said, the fitness industry is just focused on youth and focused on, just kind of like this idea that, do you have trainers who are 45 plus? Does your retreat cater to that person? Is it appealing to that person to come and see people like them who are the same age, living the lifestyle that they want? Healthy, well, active, strong, there's a lot of them out there. So yeah, it's a huge, really exciting part of the market, I think. And I think over the next 5 years, maybe even sooner, we're really going to see hopefully a lot of fitness, health, wellness brands waking up to this whole demographic of people who are underserved, and like I said, they've got the time and they've got the money. So move on to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is the modern luxury. This is like the high net worth individual, the modern luxury wellness consumer. So you have probably seen, Giles, that there's lots of, I guess, whether it's wellness tourism or gyms that are now offering kind of high ticket, very expensive membership programs. They might be, $40,000 a year. Some of them are much more. which include all different aspects of health and wellness, from personalization to testing to creating nutrition plans, very hyper kind of bespoke, which is what this customer and this persona wants and expects. So they might have that in other areas of their life, from concierge services to personalized everything from personal shopping. So they're used to having personalization, hyper personalization. So I think that is what they come to expect when it comes to their health and wellness offerings. So if you think about, again, going back to my like, who are they, where do they shop, how much do they spend, what do they want? So some of those examples, they might be going to clinics where they can have personalized testing. They might go to things like Lancerhof or The Ranch or Syro in Dubai, places where people can go and have this ultimate luxury experience whilst taking care of their health and wellness. So again, it's a growing market. I could probably say more and more on this one, but yeah, I know we've got lots to get through in the conversation today, but that is the 5th persona. And since we've spoken, Giles, there is also a number 6 that I'm also very interested in, which is Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So yeah, I know we've talked a little bit about this, and I think people are paying a lot of attention to Gen Z and Gen Alpha now.
Yes, yeah, I'd love to dig into that one, especially Gen Alpha, because I think Gen Alpha is something we haven't really touched too much on in the fitness industry as yet.
Babies.
Yeah,
infants.
Yeah. But how that whole, and it seems, you know, we had a talk on Gen Z at last year's PerformX, and it does feel like a huge knowledge gap for a lot of the kind of slightly older generation of going, these people seem like aliens to me, I just don't get why don't they.
Well, they live in my house, you see, Gen Alpha. Yeah, so that's the difference when you've got a teenager. It's like, oh, I actually understand Gen Alpha. They do speak a different language. It's so funny.
So obviously these guys are far more influenced by tech and social, and you've got a lot of experience in that with your background at Fit.
Yeah.
So how do you see their habits being being born into that world of tech? How do you think the world of fitness, how do they see it?
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, to look at the life of a Gen Z, because essentially I've heard people say before they were born online, which is kind of weird when you think about that concept of being born online. And what that means is that, you know, you've been born, and obviously we see it, right? We see people putting photos of their, you know, 1-day-old
Right,
baby.
yeah.
Of course, people do, you know. I mean, I've shared, you know, things with kids online, and my kids online, but it's like, people are born online, so they've grown up with this world where you can interact on screens, you can FaceTime anyone from anywhere in the world. There's no idea that like, oh, it's strange that we're FaceTiming Grandad and he's in Prague and we're in the UK. It's just normal, you know. I remember my son saying before, like, I tried to explain to him that before FaceTime, you just had to call people and just listen to their voice. He was like, what? So yeah, they've been born online. We've heard this generation described as the anxious generation and the lonely generation, which I think is, you know, from a mental health perspective, maybe speaks to the fact that they are very aware of mental health, and the literacy that Gen Z have around mental health is so advanced in comparison to previous generations. So they talk very openly and very honestly about mental illness, about anxiety, about depression, about ADHD, about all of these things that, you know, as I say, you know, a few generations ago, people didn't have the understanding and the literacy of neurodivergence. They just didn't understand all these things. So Gen Z are much more aware, they're much more clued up, they're much more educated when it comes to mental health and mental illness. But going back to, you know, lonely generation and online generation, extremely online is a term that I've seen a lot recently with Gen Z. So extremely online, and that is not necessarily seen as a good thing, but a lot of Gen Z, when it comes to health and wellness, are actually looking, they do, you know, enjoy integrating tech. So as you said, they're used to tech, but they also want to create real life connections. They want experiences with others. So, you know, leaving the house, leaving the tech, and actually meeting and gathering. And that's why community, again, is really important to them. So there's a few things in there, but I think the mental health focus is really kind of, you can see it in their purchasing. You can see it in their conscious spending. You can see it in, for example, the boom across Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Well, not Gen Alpha yet because they're too young, but with no and low alcohol brands. So I think it's something like 40% of Gen Z will buy or spend more money on a non-alcoholic product that they believe has health benefits. So whether that includes CBD, whether that includes neuromodulation, something that has health benefits. So not just saying, okay, I'm not going to drink alcohol, I'm going to have a lemonade, a glass of sugar. It's actually picking a product which can have that social element. They can still go out and have fun, but they don't feel the need to drink alcohol. And maybe it's because they're wearing wearables, and so they're seeing, okay, how does this affect my sleep? How does this affect the way I feel? Does this, does this increase anxiety? Also, there's a connection to it when it comes to alcohol around surveillance. We said about always on and online. This is a whole other thing, so pull me back if I just go too far. But imagine you've been born in this always online. So you're extremely online, you were born online. Everything in your life has been surveilled to some level. So the freedom that maybe, so my husband always talks about, when he was young, being very hedonistic, he could just go out and have fun and let your hair down. And no one really, the next day, I mean, no one could even remember because they actually couldn't remember. But, it wasn't there for the world to see. And I think the younger generations, sadly, are so aware that they are surveilled, and that the idea is that there can be a photo, there can be a video, someone can share that, you could say something wrong, you could do something wrong, and that is it. That whole idea that your career, your future employer is going to see this, I don't know, drunken video of you. And how sad in a way that, because we all need sometimes to be able to have fun and let your hair down without thinking that this could go online, and therefore you've always got to be exactly that. You can never make a fool of yourself, you can never make a mistake. No wonder they're anxious. You know what I mean? Everything's documented. So I think a lot of Gen Z are like, I'm not drinking alcohol because they don't want that fear of letting go,
ruining your personal brand, kind of,
which is crazy, right? It's so, when you really get into that, I'm like, that is stressful.
You didn't really have a personal brand when Facebook, that wasn't really a personal branding type thing, was it, back when I was in my 20s or whatever?
When I was at school,
when Instagram got created, I guess that's what the first channel that was like.
And now we have, even my son who's 13, he'll have online safety and online, assemblies at school, which is important. But they will talk about this idea that when you put something out onto the internet, or online, future employers, let's start thinking about, careers, and 16 years old, and your future employer might look at your Facebook. It's wow, this is stressful. So there's a lot in there. But I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha, when it comes to health, fitness, wellness, they're educated, they care about holistic health and mental health, and they want connection. They want experiences with other people.
Really interesting. And when it comes to, I think there's an interesting thing I read, that their share of wallet is a lot higher than previous generations, as in they're spending more of their money on health and fitness.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily going to the gym, because their perception of gyms tends to be more towards the budget end. This is like a bit probably generalisation, but so they're spending more on, Active Ager, everything but they're not spending as much on gyms. And they might wince at a £60 a month gym membership, which is what we grew up on, those kind of 50 quid, 60 quid, that was normal. But what do you think, how do you think a gym can tap into more of that spend, rather than just being the place, the key card that they tap into, and that's it?
It's a really good question, and I think it is a real challenge, because you're right, they're spending in the wellness industry a lot, as you said, athleisure. They might be spending on apps and almost again, they're educated, so they might go, okay, I've got my own plan, I've got my own coach or online program that I'm following, and they're kind of looking at the gym as a space and going, do I actually need it? So I think it's understanding, again, what are their motivations, what do they want, and what do they need? I think they need more spaces within gyms if possible, that's not just like this, because the gym can be quite like a solo experience, right? It's like you go on your own, you might go use that machine, go on that, rower, you might go to a class, but it's almost like the individual. I think they've got to think of it more as, what can you do from a group, which might sound a bit like, wow, because again, people have gone more towards individuals than groups, but I think it's understanding what they care about and creating those spaces. Maybe there's cohorts, maybe there's programs, maybe there's something that you go on that journey together, like a 10-week thing or a 6-week thing, understanding how mental health supports seasonality. So the winter, throughout the winter, what are the things that are going to help support a young person's mental health through activity, through fitness, through coming into your gym, through becoming a member. And I think if they're made more aware of the fact that it's not just coming into, as you said, lift weights or do whatever, it's like speaking to the fact that doing those activities does support your mental health. It's a real interesting one. I think there's definitely going to be some unlocks there, but I don't think it's necessarily a quick thing that we can just turn on. We'd probably have to reimagine and rethink what's possible in the gym environment, in the kind of end-to-end experience, like when they're not at the gym, is the kind of touch points there through technology that engages them. So I think there's definitely a challenge, and I can see why for many gym owners they're probably scratching their heads for this consumer and going, how do we get this consumer through our door?
Yeah.
Because as you say, it's doesn't seem to be at the moment like where they want to be.
No, and it's as you say, being born into digital, they can educate themselves really quick. Like even sometimes I'll chat to people and they've started a business completely just from learning on YouTube and things like that. So the style of training is they'll set up a pod in a gym, and it's very isolating. Even that, you've got your headphones in, you just go and get all the kit, and you stand in a certain bit. So that's very different to how we used to train, even just moving around the gym.
One thing to add to that as well is we've talked about these different personas, but one thing that is so important, I guess, that we share is that, and at PerformX, I'm going to probably go through this in real detail to make the customer. So when I say customer, it would be the client that I'm working with, the business, the brand. Understand that you cannot appeal to all these consumers, and that is not what I'm telling you to do. I'm not saying here's 6 consumers, appeal to all of them. That is not a strategy. That is a straddle, and it is just never going to work. So some gyms, I think that's the problem, is they're setting it up for the Active Ager. So let's say their classes are being targeted at that kind of that person. The scheduling of what time the classes are on might be scheduling the person who doesn't have to do, like I said, got young kids or school commitment. So they're trying to appeal to too many customers. They're saying, okay, we've got these people over here, let's do a creche for the kids. We've got this everyday athlete, let's put a, super intense high rock style workout on in the morning. You've got Gen Z, and they're looking at, maybe someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, all of these personas that she said, do we need to target them all? No. You have to pick one. And even that might sound like, well, how can we just pick one? But I've got examples of this, from different brands. And I think historically, brands did do this. They would focus on one segment of the market, build a really loyal community before adding other things. But I think now, when we speak to startup founders or organizations that are trying to grow, this idea of growth means, well, we've got to just go for more types of people. And if you are trying to attract everyone, if your marketing is for everyone, this idea, that doesn't make you inclusive. It doesn't make you inclusive. Say, we target everyone. Actually, you're marketing to no one. No one is seeing themselves represented in your brand, because no one is everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's very meta.
No, it's such a good point. It's being ultra focused and completely understanding your customer persona inside out, as opposed to...
And having a spearhead. So the spearhead approach is when you pick one of these consumers. So if I'm working with your brand and I say, okay, which one of these, hierarchy, tell me the one that is like the most important to your business and brand, which is the one that is going to be a game changer for you, you're going to engage with, because there's millions of each one of these. There is millions of each one of these consumers. So the idea that, it's too niche, that's what I hear sometimes people say, but is it too niche to just focus on, maybe not the everyday athlete, but maybe some of the others. No way. There's millions of consumers that sit across all these categories. So if you start there, and the whole of the optimizer biohacking community, so the people that are listening to the Huberman podcast, Peter Attia, the people that are wearing 3 wearables, we know those people. They've got an Oura ring, they've got the Apple Watch, they've got another watch. I'm like, why are you wearing a Whoop and an Apple Watch and an Oura ring? I'm like, okay, you do you. So they're optimizing, they've got all the data. That person, that community, there are millions of those people. And if you really focus, you grow that tribe, those people become your brand advocates, they become loyal. You can test and learn from what do they want next before you bring out a new feature, before you launch a new product. That is a strategy to win. It is not going to work if you're trying to appeal to every one of these personas.
I've got a question for you on something I've been interested in terms of these the longevity conversation and these higher ultra personalized premium offerings. Do you see that sit more with this biohacker type? Because I think, or do you see the longevity conversation becoming more mass market? Because this is a bit of a loaded question, doesn't? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think there's always going to be some overlap with certain things, like if you were to do it as like a Venn diagram. But again, going back to the approach of being hyper focused, I think maybe the misconception is that the word longevity, we're thinking of people that are already active agers, so like you said, already a certain age, but people that are focused on longevity, so optimizers, biohackers, that they're not necessarily already of a certain age. So I might be interested in longevity, and I'm 37. A 27-year-old might be interested in longevity because, as you said, the knowledge piece is changing and they're learning more. So I don't think it's necessarily about, I think of longevity as something that, like we discussed before, it's changing the narrative of what it means to live well and to age well. Because again, when do people start considering what aging is. I think from a beauty industry perspective, people talk about anti-aging products for 30-year-olds and people laugh. They're like, they don't need that, they're 30 years old. But when do you consider aging? You know, we're all aging. You know, you're aging when you're 20, you know, you're 21, then we're always aging. So I think longevity for me is about how do I maintain the lifestyle that I want? How do I have the energy that I want? How do I enjoy the quality of life that I want for as long as I can and for as long as I want? And I think that's what people are tapping into. So across everything from supplements to, you know, personalized blood tests. I think going back to what you mentioned around these subscriptions or people signing up for more expensive, year annual programs. I think there is a shift. It is happening. We're seeing more and more people saying, actually, this is a good example. People are, because it's not an endless amount of spend, right? Consumers have a certain amount of spend, but it's where they're choosing to spend. So I think, again, going back to working with car industry or with hotel brands, it's looking at what people used to spend on that they're now willing to change and say, okay, instead of buying, let's say, a really expensive luxury car or spending money on a really expensive trip where there's lots of indulgence, so that might be like champagne and fine food, and like that has changed. The modern luxury wellness consumer doesn't consider that to be luxury anymore. Like that's kind of old school luxury. You know, that kind of like maximalist, you know, even from the fashion industry, it's gone to being more around quiet luxury and like this idea that things are quality and they're, like I said, the point around making your life and your experience, making you well, making you healthier. So a lot of places that people will go, actually, they want the vegan menu. They want to eat, you know, sustainable food. They want to have non-alcohol brands on the menu in these 5-star luxury resorts. So it is changing what people consider to be luxury and where they're willing to spend. Maybe they're not interested anymore in having like, you know, designer this and like I said, like really expensive car. Maybe then, you know, a watch. People used to have, you know, a watch like maybe for men of a certain age would be the thing. Maybe they're not actually that bothered anymore about like those things and they'd rather spend £40,000 a year on a wellness, you know, a wellness centre membership. So it is changing.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I really look forward to getting more into those at PerformX. That was a great little teaser for everyone, but I think there's a huge amount of value to for that live talk.
I'll be there, and also I'll be discussing now and next. So it's the start of 2025, obviously next year. So I'll also be looking at some of the updated data. What are the trends for 2025? How does that impact, you know, these consumers, and what new things are coming ahead?
Amazing. And looking at so I listened to one of your recent modern wellness podcasts, and something that Ollie said that intrigued me is that despite the fact that it feels like the fitness industry is really having its moment and a lot of big brands entering the space, a lot of excitement around the space, it feels like the nation's health is actually getting worse. You know, living lifespan is going down for the first time. And why do you think the industry's still not sort of turning the dial on the nation getting more active?
Yeah, it's such an interesting challenge, isn't it? Because as you say, we've got all of these things. We're talking about these consumers and everybody's wearing wearables, and we're talking about biohacking and things that, you know, some people are very interested in expanding their life and their health. But we know, like you say, across the nation and across, if you go zoom outside of the fitness and the wellness industry, a lot of people, the modern world is incredibly challenging for their physiology and for their physical and mental health. It's everything. We've just made our lives more comfortable. You know, the technology, the transportation, everything in the last, I guess, 50 years has been around how can we create automation? How can we create less, do less? So for example, like we're less active, so more sedentary lives, like just getting less steps, sitting more, sitting at desks, sitting on a train, sitting in front of the TV. We are not designed to sit. It is bad for us, bad for our brains, it's bad for our bodies. So I think the modern world challenge is that for many people, they are sedentary, their lives are stressful. Like people talk about stress now as like this kind of, you know, I'm sure you hear people talking about this endemic of stress and burnout. People's lifestyles are so fast, you know, everything's become quicker, right? You know, I listened to something recently that really highlighted this to me, and it was talking about how we just added speed to everything. So dating became speed dating, walking became speed walking, like dialing was speed dialing. Everything we thought fast is better, the faster the better, right? So what have we done? We've made our lives faster, and it has become incredibly stressful. So for many people, they're more stressed out, So they might have additional financial stress. There's so many things layering on top, but I think the modern world, ultra processed food. I mean, come on, for so many people, I think it's in the UK, 80% of, I think maybe this was under, I should have written this stat down for you, so I don't want to butcher it, but essentially a lot of young people, a high percentage of their diet is ultra processed food. It comes out of a packet. It is full of ingredients that are not necessarily good for the body.
Yeah.
And all of these things compounding are, I think, what's causing this, as you said, mental health crisis. People feeling that actually their health and their, you know, we should be healthier than ever. Look at all the stats we've got. Look at all the things we've got. We should be healthier than ever, but we're not. And I think that the only way that's going to change, sadly, is through individuals, you know, learning about all this stuff, being proactive around their own health. I don't necessarily, it'd be great if we had more support. So if there was like government intervention, if there was things in schools, if there was things really, and I almost laugh when I say it because I'm like, oh yeah, government intervention, NHS, like it's almost a joke because it's not a priority, but it really needs to be, because, you know, a lot of companies talk about innovation, they talk about the future, they talk about, you know, how they're going to increase profits and all the rest of it, and growth of the economy. Who is going to do that work if this younger generation, if people growing up with mental health crisis, with obesity, with, you know, all chronic diseases, who is going to do that work? Who is going to innovate? Who's going to grow this and sustain this economy if we are sicker than ever? It's like, wow, it's a whole other thing. It's a bit doom and gloom. So I'm not sure what the answer is in terms of how we access more people, but I think that the work that you and I do, and you know, everyone in the fitness and health industry, everyone that comes to PerformX, like people, they're so passionate, like I said before around the advisory board, about helping people to change their own lives. It really is what it is. That's what it comes down to. So I think the more people that work in the fitness and health industry, the more people that empower themselves and learn as much as they can and share that with others, hopefully, you know, we can only help as many people as we can. But I think that's why this industry is so exciting to work in, and why people are so passionate.
And I think an important point on it, and something we focus on, is insight like this and helping people, business owners and from C-suite leaders down to coaches, to better understand the ideas in the business ideas behind the fitness industry, because there's a lot of people that are super passionate but end up having to leave the industry through just not making enough money and thinking, oh, I'll just get an entry-level office job instead, which is just frustrating because you're losing such talent. But then, I guess, bit of a shameless plug, but what, in your opinion, why are events like PerformX so unmissable? Yeah, no, it's great. I think, firstly, learning. You know, exactly what you just said, and I know this, you know, across the last, I guess, decade or more now that I've been working in the fitness and wellness industry, is that you're so right. There are so many talented, wonderful, amazing, passionate people, but they're not necessarily business people. They're not necessarily thinking about, they're not necessarily marketeers, and that doesn't mean they're just incredible at what they do. And I think going to something like PerformX, I think there's such an opportunity to learn. You know, I'm a voracious learner. If I really had to take you step by step through all the things I've done in my career, I would not have been able to do them if I hadn't been so I just always want to learn. Every opportunity, every experience, every room that I'm in, I'm asking questions. You know, don't be afraid to ask questions. Learn. I think build a network. Go to events, leave your house, leave your computer, where you can actually meet people and ask them questions. There is just such power in that. So yeah, I think anytime you can go to an event where you know there is going to be like-minded people, an industry full, a room full of people from your industry, it's always going to be valuable. And it's up to you as well how much you get out of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, be there, like go to all the talks, ask questions, like go around and build, continue to build a network and build your knowledge. And if you know there's an area that you struggle in, whether it is marketing, business, whatever that is, learn, learn. And there'll be someone who wants to learn something from you as well. So there'll be, think about what it is that you can help others with and what you need help for. And don't be afraid to ask. Yeah, I wrote that down from our conversation offline earlier of just not being afraid to ask, and it's definitely how some of the doors I've opened in the past. And I think those people won't be getting as many of those kind of messages as you think. Like if someone is a big time influencer, yes, but sometimes people high up in companies, they're not going to get someone going, I really, really admire your work. Can we have a chat? You know, because it's not common in that sort of world. So it's definitely asking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Ask for what you need.
We've touched on the importance of building a community, and I think it is a bit of a buzzword in our sector and something that people don't necessarily master. But you've managed to build a really, really strong community. And I think some of the doors you're now able to open are amazing. And, you know, you're able to, you know, we were talking in quite a good detail on your book and your strategy behind that. And so what would be your piece of advice for someone looking to build and engage a community?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Again, I wish we could do a whole another show all about that. I think it is really important. It is a buzzword. People say it all the time, especially brands around like, well, community. And you're like, what does that actually mean? It means people who care about the same thing that you care about. It's people that are like-minded and people that want to engage. They want to be together. And I think that's why brands like High Rocks, like CrossFit, there's certain running communities that have just done this so well because they're not trying to sell a product or a service. They're trying to bring people together around a shared experience. So I think in terms of advice to individuals, so if it was like a coach, for example, who was like, okay, I want to build my own community, again, understanding what you care about, genuinely what you care about, not what sounds cool, what you actually care about, and sharing that with others. There will be other people that care about the same things as you. I think often now people want it to just be this virtuous mission, you know, this like kind of sounds cool to say like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is why, you know, everything's in service of the community. But it's like, is it really? You know, like it's got to be real. It's got to be true. It's got to be honest. So that's the first thing. I think, again, we talked a little bit about this when we said, why should people go to events? Why should people come to PerformX? It's like, you've got to meet people now. And it's harder than ever in a sense because we can connect online. It's like, oh, I know that person. Have you actually met them? Like, there's so many people who I meet and I go, hi, oh my gosh, nice to actually meet you. Because they're like, but we've met. I'm like, no, we haven't. It's just
True.
Instagram or podcasting. And when you actually get in the room with people, it's so different. Then when you follow up with someone, they've met you. You've had a different experience. And I know it's not possible all the time, like schedules. Like I am also, I don't want to say the word busy, but you know, I've got a lot of commitments and work and kids and life. So I get it. You can't just be out every day meeting people. But when and where you can, that investment will pay off. That is something that will 10x. Spending the time with someone once a week, different person, let's say, if you are having lunch with them, if you recommend a book to them, if you go for a run with them, like that's something I do with friends where we're like, we are both, we'd love to see each other, but our schedules don't always align. I'm doing this actually with a friend soon, Hazel Wallace, you might know her. She's training for a race. And I was like, okay, great. We can do a long run together. We do the long run, we can catch up. It fits in, you know, I think take the time where you can to meet with people and don't think of a community as it's got to be 10,000 people online. A community can be 12 people, it can be 3 people in real life. It's so much more powerful. In fact, if someone said to me, you have the choice of like 10,000, and it's not to say that, you know, you can't build meaningful communities online, of course you can, but I think given the choice between like 10,000 virtual or 100 in the room, today I would choose 100 people in the room to connect with those people.
Yeah, so true. That is so true. Like PerformX Big Hall is what, 700 or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like 2, 3, yeah.
It's a lot of people. Yeah. It's a lot of people. And so I think, don't think of community as just being like a million. Think of your community as maybe even start with 5. You have a community. Everyone has a network.
Yeah, right.
Start with that.
Start with
and go from there.
Let's talk about your book.
Let's talk about it.
So this is your second book.
Yeah.
Give us the lowdown. Tell us the. I listened to your podcast on it, and you gave away a bit of a key takeaway. But so, without giving a spoiler,
okay.
Let's
I'm keen to hear what your key takeaway was. Yes. So, second non-fiction book, publishing in February 2025 with Penguin Random House, is Decisions That Matter: How to Make Decisions in a World of Endless Choice. So, as you can probably tell now, maybe from this conversation, I mentioned, I'm a strategic thinker, and decision making is at the core of so much of what we do, whether you work in whatever industry, even your individual life right now. There is so much choice, an abundance of choice, from what to wear, to what to eat, to when to eat, to where to eat, to what to watch. There's just like so much, and people have to make these decisions every day, and it's overwhelming. So people find themselves stuck going, okay, well, I don't even know. There's so much information. Where should I start? Well, this person said I should do that. I think my parents really think I should do. It's just overwhelm. Overwhelm is what I hear from people. They say, I'm indecisive. I don't know how to trust your gut. What does that mean? I don't know how to trust my intuition, because they don't know what their intuition is. So yeah, I think throughout the book, I spent I spent way over a year researching and writing this book. It really was like, yeah, it's just been through so many iterations to get to the book that is now, that's going to be published, that I'm really proud of. And that's really what I hope this book will do. I hope people will pick this up and, I've purposely kept the things in. I've taken some things out. I have kept things in that I want people to read. And I know it sounds silly, but how many books do you buy that you finish? Honestly, what percentage?
So I am an audiobook man for that very reason.
Yeah. And how many do you finish?
I finish probably one a week. I'm quite big into my...
Yeah.
So
I've
got a bookshelf full of
books that you haven't finished.
Yeah, holiday books, and then you're like,
Exactly. So I purposely thought, I want people to finish this book. I want people to read this entire book, get to the end and go, okay, this can help me in personal decisions. This can help me in professional decisions, career decisions, relationship decisions, and the mundane kind of, some things can be automated. Some things you can make a decision once, and that's it for the rest of the year because you made that decision consciously. So yeah, I hope it's going to be useful. I hope people are going to finish it, pass it on. Decisions that matter. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, the point I took from your preview of it was just that the idea, that concept of analysis paralysis, and that which is fascinating. Onto my next question, but a point in Oliver Burkeman's new book is around that. How our ancestors had so much less information. They just got used to making decisions with no idea what consequence was going to happen, and people want to focus too much on having this 10-year plan, but actually it could all go wrong tomorrow, so you're better off just making the next decision, the next best decision over and over again, as opposed to over strategizing kind of thing, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're both fans of Oliver Burkeman's work. I think it's super interesting, and I actually think we need to combine, my approach is probably a halfway house, which is like, you have to make decisions based on now, the knowledge that you have now, the options that you have available to you now. People, you hear them talking about like, oh, well, in 10 years, will I do this or this when I get to that? You're like, you're not even there yet. Do you know what I mean? Your company's not there yet. So when we'll hire this or when we'll expand there, it's like, whoa, you're not there yet.
Yeah.
So you're trying to make decisions now for a future that you're not ready for, maybe.
There's a phrase, ruling imaginary kingdoms, that I like.
Exactly that. So there's that. But there's also the reality that if and when you do get there, you can't go, oh, well, I never thought about what could happen at this stage, so I just live in the now. Like, that's also, I think, terrible. It's not real practical advice, and often we hear that, don't we, around like, just be present and just be mindful and like, choose what you want right now. That is not a good long-term strategy either. And, we're both fans of James Clear's work, and he talks a lot, actually, about bringing the future into the now, in the sense that you're making decisions, or in his case, habits, that are going to impact your future self. And so again, in the book, I talk about that and how when you look at different decisions that you're making today, even some mundane ones, if you think about the frequency of a decision, if you compound that again and again and again and again, your future self, that could be a year away or 10 years away, will either be better off or worse off. You'll be closer to the goal or you'll be further away. And that could be a small decision that you make daily that you can commit to now that goes, oh, okay, cool. Like, on Monday to Friday, this is what I decide, this is what I do. And compounding that can hopefully lead you in the direction, at least, maybe not the exact goal, but in the direction of the 10-year plan. Yeah, and I really liked, you've mentioned it a few times about how you sort of very strategic with so you almost like reverse engineer things. You go, I want that to happen, so these steps are, and then people are surprised when it happens, but you've thought of it. Yes. It's why you did it. But I think on that point and what you've just talked about is that, I like the Bob Proctor thing of like closing the gap. So you're like, here's who I need to be, here's who I am now, and what are the habits of that person. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? So what would it take? Yeah. What would it take, really? Again, we could do so much, Giles. I feel like I need a whole extra hour. Yes. But really great thing when you said that around the gap. I just love this. If you have a team, let's say you work in a startup or you've got a small company, maybe you've got 20 people or less, 10 people. Even just yourself and another partner, you can basically do this red team, blue team exercise. And red team, blue team exercise is, we've got an idea, and I'm going to say the red team, your goal is to showcase why this is the best idea, how it's going to work, what are the benefits, what's the best thing that could happen, why is this a good decision? Give me 100 reasons. Blue team, and again, you mix it up, so it's not just like one team versus another, but it could be from marketing to brand to finance to CTOs, whoever you want. The other team, you are tasked with showing us why this is going to fail, what could go wrong, what are we missing, why is this a stupid idea, why will this never work? Tell me why this will never work. Nice. Right? So you look at them side by side. Once you have that information available, you are going to make good decisions, because you are going to see, okay, if this potential blocker or barrier could stop us from achieving our goal, we're now aware of it. if this amazing opportunity and this, you know, unlock over here is going to 10x, you're now aware of it. So you're not blindsided, and you don't have that risk of everyone, this is what we're doing, so it's got to be amazing, and we're only going to focus on the good. Or vice versa, those people that go, well, I didn't want to do this anyway, and I don't think it's going to work, so I'm going to be a handbrake. You know, you've got to have both in the team. But I love that exercise. Try and do that sometimes. Red team, blue team, and then look at the outcome and move forward.
I like that, because then you're not hiding anything. You're not pretending
Yes.
not to know something. Yeah.
Because I think leaders, and I don't know how about yourself with your organisation, but I think leaders often, they want to hide maybe some things just to make everyone, you know, excited about the journey, excited about the mission. You know, let's galvanise everyone around this idea. And hide the fact that actually no one knows all the outcomes. Of course it could fail.
Yes.
In what ways? Let's talk about it.
And then you can strategize around them if you needed to as well. Yeah. That's so true. And final question. I think I really enjoyed your episode with Oliver Berkman, who we've just talked about. What's your personal biggest takeaway from his book or your conversation with him?
Oh, great questions. You know, you're very good at this. You're so nice to be in the guest seat for a while, because I'm often the host, as you said, on Power Hour and Modern Wellness. I'm always the host. So yeah, Power Hour episode with Oliver Berkman. I love his presence. He's very calm. He's very, you know, considered. And I'm like 100 miles an hour, so that was great to be like, oh, he's very calm. I love what he talks about in thinking around finitude. So the fact that everything is finite. And again, sometimes this can seem like quite a morbid thing to be like, everything in your life is finite. Everything. So anything good or bad will not last. So anything, think about something that is terrible and stressing you out, it won't last. Think about something that's amazing and is the best, it won't last. And it's sad to say. But it's also, in a way, makes you more appreciative. It makes you more grateful. It makes you celebrate the thing more because you know that it's not going to be here forever. So I really like that. There's a lot of his work that I like. I think we both share a lot of, you know, similar thoughts on the way he talks about embracing imperfection, especially as I think we probably got quite a lot in common, Giles, when it comes to our approach to things. You know, like often people do the kind of overachieving, hyper-focused, you know, maybe a bit anxious or stressed. Imperfection isn't something that sits well with us. You know, people will talk about it and embrace failure. No, I feel like the idea of embracing imperfection isn't something that feels good to a lot of people. It doesn't feel good. But I think the way he frames it often is quite freeing to know that, well, what's the alternative? What does perfection look like? It isn't a possible standard for anyone or anything. So when you accept that, you can kind of go, oh yeah, actually, perfect doesn't exist. So embracing imperfection is probably, it's quite freeing.
Yes. Yeah, love that. Great point to end on.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. And we'll be in touch, obviously, in planning the PerformX schedule, and looking forward to having you on stage.
Yes, I will see you there, Giles. Thanks for having me.